You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
So I want us to get an update about two important issues that we really shouldn't get our eyes off. There's an investigation into that alleged rape of a 7-year-old child in the Eastern Cape in Matatiele. You have seen protests for justice for Cwecwe, and the police have been investigating the matter. This is something that happened last year. I just want us to just hear from them how far that investigation is, and whether they've got some, possible successful leads they're following. I also want us to get an update on that illegal mining kingpin, Tiger. Remember when we spoke to the police the last time, I promised you that as often as I can, I'm going to bring them to come and give you an update, even if it's not much of an update. But I think that's important, because sometimes we make the mistake of just taking whatever the police tell us, whatever government tells us, oh, this is what we're investigating, and we let it be, when in fact we have a responsibility to go back to them and ask, how far is that going? And they have a responsibility to come and update you on that. So that's what we're going to be doing a lot. All of these things that are being investigated, or announcements that were made that we're going to be looking into this, we want to go back and find out, have you looked into that, and how far is that? Because some of these things take forever, because also sometimes the investigators themselves feel like, what's the point? We're not making headways. We might as well not show any enthusiasm. But there are people on the other side who are waiting for justice. There are people on the other side who want to see the right thing done. So we've invited Brigadier Athlenda Mathe, who is the spokesperson for the National Police, to come and speak to us about these two important matters. I'm going to bring Afriforum as well, by the way, when we discuss the issue of Cwecwe. Brigadier Mathe, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
A very good morning to you and to your listeners.
Let's start with the illegal mining kingpin, Tiger. For some context here, listeners who may not know who Tiger is, this is a man that was involved in illegal mining. The police believe he's one of the kingpins. He was there in the Northwest when there was an operation by the SAPS, and basically he was just let go. When people were being arrested coming out of the mines, he emerged and just disappeared. To this day, we don't know where he is. Just like with Bushiri, we still don't know how that man escaped. We don't know where this kingpin that the police knew about him as he was coming out, where he is. So just take us back to the last thing I remember, Athlenda, is that you guys made some arrests. Some of the police officers were arrested. Where are we now?
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity, Clement. I can confirm that we had arrested 4 of our own. And following that arrest, we then removed those 4 members from that particular operation, and we appointed an investigating officer in terms of our disciplinary procedures. I can confirm that 2 are on suspension following the report that was received from the investigating officer who was dealing with the disciplinary matter. So 2 of them have been suspended, and 2 are still at work, but they've been removed from the operation.
Okay, the two that have been suspended, I would imagine these are the ones that the investigation shows were more closer to this matter, and the 2 that are still at work, have they completely been absolved of any charges, or that must still happen in the court?
Well, I can't say much because the matter is still before court. The investigation as well is still ongoing. You will recall that we have not found Tiger. So I cannot say much because we wouldn't want to jeopardize the ongoing investigation and also the matter that is pending before court. Okay.
But the other 2, though, that are still at work, are they not going to compromise any investigations against them? Because they're still being investigated, right?
Look, the investigating officer is leading, and he obviously provided a report to the divisional commissioner to say these are his findings, and his recommendations. So in his recommendations, he did not recommend the other two not to be suspended based on what he has found in his investigation, which is information that I cannot divulge. And then he recommended that the two be suspended. So why the two? It's information that is contained in his report to the Divisional Commissioner of Visible Policing and Operations.
Okay, so when they appeared in court, what charges are they facing?
Amongst the charges that they are facing is defeating the ends of justice. That's one of the charges that I can recall. And then aiding a prisoner to escape from lawful custody, a suspect rather, to escape from lawful custody. Those are amongst the two charges that they are facing.
Okay. Okay. So escaping a suspect, aiding a suspect from escaping from lawful custody. Okay. So there's two. Just to repeat what you said, there's two that are now on suspension, and there's two now that are still at work based on the recommendation that was made. Have any of them, especially these two that are on suspension, are they still planning to plead not guilty?
Well, that's a matter between employer and employee, and we cannot
in court.
That in the public domain.
Yeah, so not in the DC, but in court. When they were charged, did they plead guilty or not guilty?
All of them pleaded not guilty.
Okay.
All four pleaded not guilty. But then we conducted our own internal departmental processes, and that is what led to the two being suspended and the other two still at work but removed from that particular operation because investigations are still ongoing. So no one has been cleared yet.
Okay. As the police, though, are you positive about the leads you're following, that you will find this man and you'll find who's behind this?
We are confident that the team that is working on the case will provide answers, the answers that we are looking for as to where is this alleged underground kingpin, where was he taken to. So we are quite confident that those particular answers will be provided in court.
Are you only relying on answers from them? So what I'm asking is because I would imagine you're broadening your investigation, not just to focus on these suspects. Because if they're not pleading guilty, chances are they'll tell you, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. I don't have any answers. So what else are you looking at as the police? Are you making headway? Do you have leads that seem to be leading you to answers about where this man is?
Look, it's a very broad investigation. We've got organized crime that is involved, working on this particular issue, on this particular case. We've got the Hawks that are also involved. So we're quite confident in their capabilities and expertise, that eventually we will find out what exactly transpired on that day when this particular underground kingpin escaped, and where was he taken to and why. So those are some of the answers that we are still searching for. It may be that the team has made significant progress, but because it is at a sensitive stage, this particular investigation, they wouldn't necessarily update us blow by blow because they need then to preserve the chain of evidence.
Okay. We'll check with you again on this matter because we've had this before where the police say the investigation is at a sensitive stage. We can't share much. It's been said before about other cases, and I just hope we're not going to end up like with Bushiri, where years later we still don't know how someone escaped, especially because in this case, this person was assisted clearly by the police officers. Let's move over to the Cwecwe case now, Brigadier Mathe. How far are your investigation? I saw that I think you were there on the ground, if I'm not mistaken, but you did speak to the media on Friday about where the case is. Have you met with the mom? What can you share with us?
The Cwecwe case, or let me rather not identify her, the 7-year-old girl's case, it's very complex, it's very sensitive because of certain aspects on the particular case, and one of them being that she was alleged to be raped, but no semen, no DNA, foreign DNA or another person's DNA was found on her or any of the items that were sent to our lab. So it makes it very complex because usually cases where DNA is found, they're easier to solve because then you compare. There's something to compare with. So in this particular case, there was nothing to compare because there was no semen or any DNA that was found on the child. And I think that from a point of departure made it very difficult and challenging for the investigating officers to make headway in this case. But we do concede that better efforts from our officers in Matatiele should have been put into this case, better resources, better capacity. It could have been escalated earlier and not now, where we had to send the head of the Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences Investigations Unit head on the instruction of the National Commissioner to say, go and intervene, go and retrace the steps of the investigating officer. Perhaps you can identify some gaps, some loopholes where we may have missed a step. And that is exactly why we were in Matatiele last week to retrace those steps. So last week, what essentially happened, we arrived, General Lekgele met with the investigating team and started analyzing the docket. Already before she had left Pretoria, she started analyzing the docket and already picked up some of the things she thought needed, further clarity or more information, more statements to be taken. So when we got there, indeed, she met with the complainant, the mother, and so on, and she got to understand why the mother went to social media to complain and for the nation to hear her plight. She met also with the first doctor that rather examined the child. Yeah. We got the NPA to give us authorization to get her. Those doctors, the treating doctors, statements and J88s. But already we did have the J88 in the initial investigation and so on.
So that's a report. That's a report from the doctor who said this child has been raped from her examination.
That's the medical report, yes, okay. Indeed. So we needed to conduct further investigation with the doctor, their report, not just the J88. We need the report where they examined the child and so on. So also with other doctors as well, because the child was examined by various other doctors and so on.
Do they come to the same conclusion though, the other doctors who examined her?
Absolutely. The two doctors' reports were corroborating. So, okay. So that's where we are. But, due to the sensitivity of the matter, I can't go into detail. But amongst those, statements that were taken, we went back to the school, spoke to assistant teachers. We went back to the parents of those children that travel with the child on transport. We went back. So we are busy with a very thorough investigation to ensure that we close all the loopholes and stuff. But what is more complex, Clement, is that it is a single witness case. So a single witness case means the child is the only victim and the witness in the case because no one else saw anything. So we have to rely on really intense and extensive investigative techniques because no DNA was found, so we rule that out. So we need to then interrogate other avenues to put the perpetrator on the crime scene and so on. And I know there were a lot of questions as to then why take the buccal samples and DNA of persons of interest. We do so in investigation, especially with the Schedule 8 offenses, where there's murder, there's rape, other serious and violent crime. The purpose of this is that, yes, no DNA found on any of the items of the child or on the child herself, but DNA can assist us because you might find that you take a buccal sample of a person of interest, we then compare that with our database. It can lead us to a possible serial rapist, a murder suspect who committed murder elsewhere and was on the run and is now hiding in Matatiele and so on. So that type of investigation can also assist us to solve this case. Because even though DNA was not found, but we can see the pattern and the history of a suspect and a person of interest. So that is why, because a lot of questions was like, okay, if DNA and semen was not found on the child, then why are you then taking buccal samples of your persons of interest? So DNA evidence exonerates a person from a crime scene or removes a person from a crime scene or places them, but also gives us the history when we then compare it to our database. If there's a positive link, then we follow that particular lead investigation, and it can assist us to unravel and solve a lot of other things.
Do you still need the DNA samples of the principal of the school?
Look, Clement, I don't know where the story of the principal comes from. The principal was never identified as a person of interest in this particular case. From the statements that were taken, the principal is nowhere near that school in the 3 or 4 days that we are concentrating on. So it's really, I think the social media investigators are really giving us a tough time with this particular case. And that's why we are calling for responsible social media reporting, but also that stop pointing fingers at people before they are arrested and appear in court. It's a very sensitive case. We are a nation that is torn by this particular case. We are outraged. Everyone is outraged, and you're putting people's lives at risk. You're really putting people's lives at risk by identifying them, saying the caretaker is a suspect, saying the driver of the transport, they are suspects. Please refrain, South Africa, from doing this. You're really putting people's lives at risk.
Okay, just to be clear then, Brigadier Mathe, your SAPS officials have never asked this principal for his DNA.
We, at this stage, well, I'll have to verify that, but even if they were to ask, they are asking on what basis? Because he has never been identified as a suspect. The prima facie evidence is that he was nowhere near the school, so they would be asking on what basis?
Well, that's the question that I would ask, that if you've got officials who's asked him for DNA, on what basis do they do that? Because it's easy to want to blame social media, but I don't think that's enough. In fact, just hold on there. Let me bring in Barry Bateman, because maybe he can assist us. He's the spokesperson for Afriforum's Public Prosecution Unit. Barry, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Clement, and thanks for having me.
The principal of the school, was he or was he not asked for his DNA sample? And if he was asked, by whom? Because the police say, on what basis?
He was asked by the investigating officer to provide a sample. When he questioned why he was being asked, because I must point out that he facilitated the investigating officer to take samples from those persons of interest that Athlenda just referred to. So he had assisted the police in taking those samples. 2 or 3 days later, the investigating officer says, Mr. Peterson, can I see you again, please? He comes to the school, and it was in that conversation he says, please, I'd like to take your sample as well. He says, well, am I a suspect now? The investigating officer said to him, no, you are not a suspect, but the mother insists that I take it from you. And that is when he came to us and got the advice, and we sent the correspondence to the SAPS, raising this concern related to an abusive process. And
since then, have they, taken a few steps back, or are they still insisting on that DNA sample?
That was the last we heard from the police. As Athlenda pointed out, Mr. Peterson was never a suspect. And let's say, if you're going to go in degrees, you don't even meet in this current state, the police haven't even met the bar for a suspect. We're still dealing with persons of interest. He was nowhere there. The police, having seen our correspondence, simply ignored us. If they were to persist with it, there would have been correspondence, and Mr. Peterson, as he indicated through the correspondence, he's more than willing to cooperate. He's been cooperating with the police since October last year, and this is borne out with the meetings that he's had with the police and all the engagement up to that meeting or when he was asked for the DNA. That's the last we heard from the police.
And if the police said to him, you are a person of interest, would he comply and provide his
That's what he's indicated all along. The correspondence on the 17th of February makes that clear. In terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, there's certain where you're not arresting somebody, but you require consent from somebody to get their DNA. You've got to have reasonable grounds. You can't just go around asking people for it. You must provide that. And that is what we asked for. There was never a suggestion that we won't comply, or Mr. Peterson won't, but just follow due process, and there was no follow-up from that.
Yeah. Barry Bateman, spokesperson for Afriforum's Public Prosecution Unit. Thank you. Brigadier Mathe, you had it yourself. It was your own investigating officer who asked for DNA samples from someone who's not even a suspect. So this is not social media that started this.
Absolutely. This is exactly why the National Commissioner sent the head of the Family Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Investigations Unit to go and intervene, because he had, where he was sitting, he did not have a comprehensive report. He needed to ensure due diligence in this particular case. And that's why he sent the general to go back to the Eastern Cape, be on the ground, meet with the investigating team. They must explain the decisions and the processes that were followed to try and get to the perpetrator. So I don't want to get too much into that, but I am on record saying that on what basis, and those are some of the questions that were asked, to say, on what basis are you requesting a particular person to take a buccal sample? Because in none of the statements that were taken is this person near the school, is this person of a person of interest. So if indeed our own did request based on hearsay and based on social media, we don't work on hearsay in the police. We work with the chain of evidence. So those are some of the things that we are handling in-house and we are addressing.
Brigadier Athlenda Mathe, National Police Spokesperson, thank you for making time for us. It's so tough, It's so tough. Because often these people make claims about, these are, like now, social media is the one suddenly that is pointed at this principal. And we're speaking about the need for him to provide his DNA samples. It wasn't social media. It was the police's very own investigating officer who wanted that, even when the principal himself was nowhere near the scene and the principal himself was not a suspect. But now the police are always going to try and justify their ways here of, this is how we're carrying out the investigation. Take accountability for where you're also messing it up. First of all, this is something that happened last year. It's only being escalated now, and it's not even being escalated by your own officers because they truly want to see justice. It's escalated because a woman has gone to social media. And South Africans have responded in their numbers because they are devastated by a medical report, 2 medical reports that are saying a 7-year-old child was penetrated. That's not normal. And the fact that the medical reports have said that, and we are sitting months later with no possible leads, and we're talking about the complexity of the case because, no foreign DNA found. And now it's going to be difficult because you're dealing now with a single witness case. We need to also talk about the accountability on the part of the SAPS. And I think often they also fail the victims here. It's 10:32.